All right, so what do you say we get started? How is everybody doing tonight? Good. Happy that you guys made it out. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be here. I know it's always hard with dinner time and whatnot, and we wanted to talk a little bit about dinner, well, indirectly, nutrition for endurance athletes. So I think there's a lot of information out there, and one of my hopes that we can do tonight is hopefully maybe distill some of that information and just kind of figure out what the latest trends are, and we'll go through some topic points. But essentially, the idea is hopefully you walk away feeling a little bit better about what you want to do for nutrition, and it really is individualized and whatnot. So Ryan's here with me. Ryan's got all kinds of cool credentials. He's a certified coach. And what do you want to say about yourself, Ryan?
Mine's more along the lines, yeah, I do have the Ironman certification, I do SAT. Josh is more of the background as far as the actual biology and the chemistry and the actual kinetics of the working out. Mine's more of a trial and error method. So everything that I figured out that doesn't work, I try to share that with people and try to steer them in the right path. So kind of give you a big user case profile, guinea pig.
Yeah, and that's good too. You have to do trial and error. We're going to talk about that tonight. One thing that works for one person, like TC might have this secret sauce that works great for him. You try it and you fart all the time, right? So it may or may not work for you. We'll talk about that too. So anyway, yeah, it should be good stuff. So I have a little PowerPoint for us. Objectives tonight: we want to prevent some common problems among athletes. We're going to take a really small peek at physiology. Ryan commented on it. He's like, it looks like a biology professor's with us together. And we're not going to get into the details. I just want to take a peek at it because it tells us what's going on with the body. We're also going to talk about how to eat to train. What's up, man? Come on in. You want water?
I'm good.
Okay. How to become more metabolically efficient. That is, how can we make our metabolism better? Right? We'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about finding the secret sauce. So we need JT's sauce. Right now. Okay. And then we're looking at optimal training, race day caloric intake inside that secret sauce. And then we're going to talk about what's in the coach's wallet. What's in your wallet? What's in the coach's wallet? We'll talk a little bit about what's in our cabinets, those types of things. How to prevent dehydration imbalances. How to recover from training, get faster with less effort. So I think the way that we're going to do this is I'm going to go ahead and kind of start with some of the physiology. And then we'll let Ryan talk a little bit more about some other details. We'll probably interject back and forth, but that's probably the best way to do it. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, the chemistry, sometimes I'm kind of like, sounds good.
So, okay, common problems with endurance athletes, and Ryan can talk about this too. So whenever we look at this as a whole, your nutrition is of absolute importance, right? Of absolute importance. There are two ways that you can devastate your race. Number one, go into it thinking I suck, right? Go into it thinking I'm going to just fall apart, because whatever you tell yourself, you believe 100% of the time. And if you think about nothing else, I know that's not even what we're talking about, but remember that you believe what you tell yourself 100% of the time. Okay. The second thing that you can always mess up is nutrition. So if you don't eat right, there's no way you're making it through the race. Who in here is doing something longer than 2 hours as their main event? Something longer than 2 hours is your main event. So if you don't eat right in that situation during the race, right, you're going to screw yourself up. Who in here is doing anything that lasts, 30 minutes that you want to peak perform, like you want to do a peak performance for? That should be almost everybody in the room, right? So you always want to eat to train, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So you want to get rid of bonking, so that's like falling apart. So if you're going really, really fast and then all of a sudden you fall apart, you want to get rid of that. What's up, Steve? What's up? Good. What's up isn't good, it's hi, right? So, you want to prevent GI distress, gastrointestinal distress, so you want to get rid of the stomach problems. You want to prevent heat stress, dehydration, and muscle cramps, right? Of all the athletes you've worked with, what would you say is the number one problem you see?
Well, and I won't just say the athletes I work with, because all those basically happened to me at Ironman Texas. So if you looked at my little credentials or whatever, it said 4-time Ironman finisher. It should have been 5. Ironman Texas, I got about 14 on the run. I was already under GI distress, kind of frequent stops at a porta potty, having problems. I was bonking, kind of mentally just getting cloudy and fuzzy, didn't really You know, just having a hard time kind of processing my thoughts. Heat stress. It wasn't really hot. It was 85 degrees, but it was in May, so around here it was really cool. While I was doing my training, it was mostly indoors, so my body just wasn't ready for that kind of temperature, even though it was, 85 was the high, which is really crazy. Dehydration was my main problem. Muscle cramps. I cramped up at mile 14. I stopped to get a rock out of my shoe and just leaned over and cramped up, and I couldn't get off the pavement. So after a half an hour, they're like, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I can't move, so I need to go to the med tent." But they checked my levels for sodium, electrolytes, all this stuff. They just said, "Well, you're just dehydrated." So just fluids, for 20 minutes, I was good to go. I was like, "Put me back in the course, I'm ready to go." And it's like, once they take you off. But, so I say all that, long story short is, I kind of make a joke about it, but I've done the wrong things, and I've learned from them, hopefully, and I'd like to pass that on to the people that I work with. That all this stuff Josh just said is crucial for these long types of events. Even if it's not, in the middle of the summer, when Louisville is in August, it's 105 degrees. It can happen on the coolest day in Ironman, Texas, 85 degrees, wetsuit legal. You can still, if you don't, that was my second race, and I thought I did Lake Tahoe, and I was like, if I can do that one, I can do any race, not really thinking of it, and just didn't pay attention, and didn't really know what I was kind of getting myself into. So.
Yeah, that's good. So don't be like Ryan, right?
Yeah, learn from mine.
Don't be like Ryan. So nutrition dictates your success on race day, and we're going to talk about that. So I'll try to speed through some of this just because we don't want to spend too much time just yabbing, but I would not recommend that as your number one source of nutrition. All right, so we're going to take a little peek at physiology. So this is a graph, right, up here, and we're going to talk about the wall, right? So the wall. So one of the things that we always see is people bonking, they hit the wall, they don't really understand why, right? So what this is time. So it's talking about time around that 3-hour mark, right? This is muscle glycogen, so stored glucose in the muscle. This is fatty acids. You essentially have unlimited fatty acids in the body. And this is blood glucose. So what do you guys notice happens to muscle glycogen after about 100 minutes? It comes all the way down, right? Yeah. Blood glucose starts to drop. So there's a point where there's an exponential decrease in both of those, and you hit the wall. So all the wall is lack of blood glucose, glycogen, right? Lack of carbohydrate. So then, how do you think you prevent the wall from happening?
Eat carbs, I'm in.
You have to take in carbs, right? So that's what we're going to talk about. Carbs, a lot of times we think like they're the enemy. We shouldn't be eating them. Yeah, you can get really fat adaptive. We'll talk about that. There are actually people that can really do that. And you want to do that. However, you need to take in something. Even the most fat adaptive athletes taking something. So we're going to talk about that in detail in a second. But I'd love to.
Hey, Josh, actually, sorry.
Yeah.
Can you go back to that graph?
Maybe. I can't.
So am I looking at this in the any kind of vertical slice on that graph? The sum of those is what my body is using. So let's say at 100 minutes, I am at like 15%. My body's using 15% of my muscle glycogen for energy, 35% of blood glucose, and then whatever 50% is the remaining 50% is fatty acids. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, but so and the thing is this is just a very big scope picture.
Yeah.
Everybody's
is that the
different.
general concept, like the mix of the energy sources?
Right, yeah, and it tends to move
time.
around.
Okay.
Yeah, so when you're like you first start something, it's like all ATP store stuff, and then it's more creatine, then it's more blood glucose, then it's more stored glycogen, then it's more fatty acids. But you're pulling from all of those at all times. This just illustrates what happens at the wall. I wouldn't take that too literally there.
Okay.
Mark!
Hi.
Pulling the shell.
Where's the tacos, man?
I know.
So this is a crossover concept. Trying to let your eyes get cross-eyed. That's my way to end of the joke. Okay, so what this shows us is, we talked about duration, right? Big concept. Duration. Longer you go, less glucose, glycogen, right, you have. Okay, so this talks a little bit about intensity. So this is VO2 max, or intensity, right? VO2 is just how much oxygen you're consuming, which allows us to burn calories. Okay, so as that increases, what does carbohydrate utilization do, and what does fat utilization do? So carbohydrate utilization, as you go harder, what do you use more of?
Need more carbs.
Need more carbs. As you go easier, so to speak, more or less, what do you use? More fat. So as you go harder, you use less fat. As you go harder, you use more carbohydrates. Therefore, one of the things you want to do is get as fit as possible on race day, so you're able to use more fats and be able to get closer and closer to this point. You can actually move this point over through being metabolically efficient. Wouldn't that be awesome? Move this point over so you're using more and more and more fat. Doesn't that sound cool, right? Does that sound cool?
Yeah.
Super cool. Sounds really, really cool. So, how do we do that? Through proper training and diet and food and nutrition. So, cool. We'll look at that a little bit. Do you have anything to say about this?
No, and I think you'll preview to it. It's key what a lot of people think of the easy work. A lot of people get confused about it, but some people have already shared revelations on doing the easy work actually helps you for the longer, harder work. So I think Josh has a little bit.
Yeah, that's
I'll
great.
steal the thunder.
No, that's great. I was thinking aerobic versus easy. I prefer to not use that word as much. Okay, so the idea is, you're good though. The idea is that we want to train to complete a race as efficiently as possible. We want to train to complete a race as efficiently as possible. What does that mean? We want to increase our volume of oxygen we can consume. That's our VO2. So essentially, again, how much blood's getting to the muscles and how much we can, how much energy we can use by extracting oxygen. So if we increase that, we can get fitter, right? Okay. We can also increase our aerobic energy systems to carry us through longer distances. This is what Ryan just said. That sometimes if you go easy, right, you're actually building your ability to do that. So whenever you look at those workouts and you see zone 1, zone 2, and you're like, why am I going so easy? Well, it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be easy, right? Over time, and TC can test this, over time you get faster and faster and faster if you go easy first, right? Because your ability to use oxygen goes, you've noticed that too, Tanya. Almost everybody in this room has noticed that. Kurt's noticed that, right? I was running with Maverick yesterday, and he was pulling really hard, but still, like your heart rate is low, and your effort is still a little higher. So that's what the goal is to do. So we should eat to complete race as efficiently as possible too. So if you look at this is approximately, you burn tons of calories, right? 1,200 during a half marathon, during a marathon, 3,500, during an Ironman, 10,000 calories. So then the idea, or plus, right? So the idea is you can't refuel all those calories, so you have to be as efficient in those calories as possible, right? You can't burn, you just can't take all of them in. You can take a maximum of about 30% of everything that you're burning back in. So you have to do that. So I'm going to speed this up just a quick, because I'm afraid that I'm going to run out of time if I go too much into this. But I really want you guys to understand the physiology, right? So it is extremely important. There's a lot to it. I like surface level there. You just have to know that it's important to be able to do this. So this was at Wisconsin. Is that funny? I think that's funny. That was at Louisville. Okay. Know this. Here's what it's not. So you can only absorb so much carbohydrate at a time. So you can't just take on tons and tons of carbohydrate. Otherwise, you end up here. You don't want to end up there, right? So if you take in tons of this stuff, it leads to GI issues. What have you noticed about? I know there are good products out there, and what have you noticed about some products out there that are really high in sugar and might be replete or rampant on race courses?
Well, like your Powerade, your sports drinks, that type of thing.
We're not naming any names.
Powerade.
We are recording this.
Well, we don't have any brand sponsors or anything. But I mean, you also got to run. You're going to run to the problem of, you think about carbs and you think about pastas, you think about breads and pretzels, stuff that necessarily should not be in the run portion of a race, because it's when you think about carbs, you want something that's easily digestible and has available ready what you need, not just sugar or carbs. Like, you pick up a bag of Skittles, yeah, it's got a bunch of carbs and sugar in there, but that's not what you need. So you got to be careful what's out there on the race course, because especially Ironman distance events, they'll put anything out there. I mean, they got Coke, they got drinks, they got candy, they got orange slices, they got everything under the sun that your body is not going to be able to process when you're at that point in the race.
Yeah, yeah. We'll talk about that. Amy had a great question. She posted it on Facebook about like specifically what type of substrates do you want to use. Oh, actually, I shouldn't say that. What kind of sugars you want to use, but that's a good point too. So, very cool. Okay, so what do? So you can't take in all this stuff. You can't take in all this carbs. You're going to run out if you go too hard. You're going to run out if you go too long. So what do? You become as metabolically as efficient as possible. So sometimes people can do this for a variety of ways. Let me just throw it all up here real quick. So physiologically, the aerobic training, right? We can do that. Metabolic zone-based training. So if you ever talk about zones, why are we doing the zones? Why are we always updating zones and that kind of stuff? That would be a way to be a little bit more efficient. Nutrition-wise, there's a couple of different things that you can do. So number one, you can play with the amount of the breakdown of carbs, fats, proteins, right? You can eat a little bit more on the fat side, a little bit less on the carbohydrate side, not too much less, but a little bit less. Some people can benefit from that. And then maybe just hold your protein there. What that can do is allow you to burn more fat over time. You want to do it around different time periods of the day and try it at different phases. And just to give you an example, so if I were to do, I like to talk about me, not because it's all about me, just because I feel like you get caught in this idea of one size fits all, right? So if I were to go super non-carb and go 80% fat, I don't want to do that, 70% fat, 20% protein, 10% carb, I would fall apart. I physically cannot do it. And I've tried to do stuff like that. I've noticed personally, like if I am more, and Brian's talked to this a lot, I'm more around that like 40% fat, 30% protein, 30 to 40% carb. I do better if I'm around the 50% carbohydrate. I do really well. So I have to be super careful with how much I do. However, like during your base training phases, or like whenever you're trying to be really aerobic, you can eat more fats, less carbohydrates, and be able to get away with it. Why is that?
You're burning less carbohydrates.
Because of
And
The crossover
utilizing
theory?
more body fat.
Yeah, you're burning less carbs. You don't need as many, right? You're not doing quite as much high intensity, hopefully, stuff. We always do reverse periodization, but you're not doing quite as much. So cool. And we're gonna know this a lot better. So if you're gonna do supplements, then like you can reduce carbohydrates.